So Daisy, do you want to get into this?
Yeah, I was
The
gonna say
next,
that's a great
this would
transition.
segue into that, right?
It is.
You
It really
really set
is.
that up nicely.
It really is. It
Thank
really is
you.
quite a transition. Yeah.
No,
Mm,
but you know what? Like getting so okay, so getting into this whole thing, it's this topic which I honestly was really surprised that you guys have not heard more about this great reset that is being talked about.
I haven't even heard it in those terms. I've heard
That's
it. I've heard
that's so
the basic
baffling. That is so
idea,
baffling.
of Davos economic World Economic Forum and one world government is basically I've heard it as a concept,
Yeah.
but not those terms.
Yeah. Which, but that's what I'm saying, that it's like so baffling to me because everything that I'm going to show, that I'm going to share with you guys, is all mainstream. It's not like little conspiracy theory
Yeah, but
websites or
mainstream.
anything, you know?
But when we talk, you're talking Daisy's mainstream. Like what
Uh,
is it?
oh no
What?
no 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 mainstream like Forbes, Times, like
Oh,
that's
okay. Oh,
mainstream.
okay. Yeah, I got you. Okay.
But we don't
I,
read that. We don't read that
Yeah, well, I wouldn't
stuff.
read. I wouldn't be reading those. Yeah.
No, but okay, so but here's the thing, that it's like if it's being talked about in places like Forbes and Times, then it should be talked about on MSNBC and
Yeah.
all of these networks, CNN. They also should be talking about this stuff because it's stuff that their mainstream propaganda rags, they all cover that. So why aren't you covering it as well? So that's what I'm saying. That it's like it should be more out there. And that's kind of crazy to me that it's not. But it goes to show how the narrative spin and. I feel like that's all we ever talk about really is just constantly this narrative spin from the media, um, that obviously this has been the game for decades, right? We have manufacturing consent
Mm,
that talked about this. When was that written? In the 70s or something? Like,
mm, mm.
this has been talked about for a long time. We already know about Project Mockingbird, right? About the CIA and all these people infiltrating into our media. So we know that that narratives are spun, right? There's no questioning that, right?
But what you're saying is, I'll say this real quick.
Yeah.
If they're only currently talking about this in Forbes and New York Times and so forth, that fits in perfectly well because what they're trying to do is they're first trying to convince the elites, the people, the intellectuals that are going to be further helping to spin this narrative before they
Yes.
so they have their buy-in before they spin it out on CNN and MSNBC
Right,
in
right.
the soap opera.
You're right. I didn't even
Yeah,
think about that. You're
in
right.
the soap opera way. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, yep. It's that's just so maddening because
Yeah.
it's so like diabolical. Like I don't notice how for me I didn't even think of that because I don't think that way. I don't
Yeah.
think like, oh,
That's how
let
they
me
would
be
do it.
this conniving little person and
Yeah.
contrive all these things. It's so crazy.
Now, I do want to say up front, like, I don't necessarily believe this, but if I did, everything I'm seeing happening now with the obvious propaganda being used to paint Trump as Hitler so that then you can do anything at all. And the Dems able to get away with rigging primaries and doing all this stuff, and the CNN, MSNBC being, and most of the mass media just being obvious propaganda of the deep state or whoever, pushing this same narrative. It all ties in exactly with this theory. I see it just more as a authoritarian push in the United States. I don't see human beings being um, uh, smart enough and coordinated enough to pull it off at a global level. But I'm not saying that they wouldn't try if some of them are getting it.
And you know what? I totally hope that what
Yeah,
you are thinking is
yeah,
exactly that. But
right,
what I'm going to show you is not my words. It's not my interpretation. It's
sure,
literally what they are saying. It's
sure,
their words of what they want to do. And when I say they, I mean the World Economic Forum, like the places that I'm taking this information from. It's their words. It's what they're saying and they want to do. But okay, so what prompted this for me wanting to talk about this is I mean I've wanted to talk about this for a while, and I've obviously talked about certain aspects of this in legislative week in review and like certain things, but this kind of, I mean, it's getting so blatant now that I feel like we have to talk about it. Okay.
hmm
And for me, I haven't really been into everything that's going on with the election, because to me, this is all a ruse. This is
Theater
all
for
the sleight of hand, you know? This is the magician's trick to keep you busy talking about, oh my God, who's gonna be the next president? Even though, like I said at the beginning, the Electoral College doesn't vote on this until December. So nothing is decided. The election is not decided by the popular vote. That is a ruse. It's a show that they are putting on for people to keep them distracted about what's going on. Meanwhile, you have all of these states now that are either doing mask mandates or they're locking down. Here in Massachusetts, for some reason, we have this ridiculous curfew from 10 to 5, when in Massachusetts, nothing is open past midnight. Okay, so what are you really doing? And ever since this COVID thing, no one's really going out or anything. So all you're really doing is that now these businesses that are open, now they have to close even earlier. And so it hurts their business even more. That's all you're doing. That's all they're doing here.
And you're also, again, showing government authority. You're showing that we can make you do this.
Right.
You know?
In Australia, and people want to say that none of this stuff is real. In Australia, they have gone over 100 days of lockdown. Okay, where they have checkpoints for people, where they have really harsh curfews. I mean, like to the point where, you know, people are saying that in China, it's only in China that they're having these draconian measures. No, that's also going down in Australia. In the UK now, they're also locking down. In Belgium, in all these countries in Europe now, they're also going on another lockdown. Okay, meanwhile, the numbers, and I'm not going to talk about any of that kind of stuff. I'm literally just going to talk about the measures that are being taken. I'm not going to talk about the validity of anything. I'm just going to talk about the measures. Okay. All right.
I'm just thinking we've been babbling for a bit. We might have to give the 1,000-point view of what the reset is, or what.
Well, there is that video from the WEF, right?
Yeah. The thing is that, I can't we can't cover every single, there's like so much information. There's really nothing to talk about the whole thing. But in this information that I'm going to read, it talks about the Great Reset. I don't want to put what my feelings are about it. I just want to read what it says there. Okay.
Well, you're certainly talking about, more globalist control of the world.
It is going to be, it is like a push for a one government type of world where you do have governments, obviously, but but they all, under the United Nations, they all kind of have to together, they have to rule.
I would argue that world government is a good thing. I mean, you need to have kind of coordination.
But
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Jesus Christ.
Let me just say real fast. The worry is that it's not going to be like a cooperative world government, as Steve and I would agree. That could be a great thing if all of a sudden, like, hey, let's stop having wars and let's all help each other and things. It would be an incredible authoritarian environment.
Well, I would say you could argue that sovereignty equals racism, basically. Just like people say Zionism equals racism, I think you can make the argument that sovereignty equals racism, because basically you're saying that you can trample on other people's rights for the benefit of your sovereign nation. So I just think how do you move beyond that? And I think the answer is some kind of, you have to have some kind of global cooperation at a global level.
And again,
global government.
The worry is that the direction things seem to be moving, as I say, just in a petri dish here in the United States, as well as worldwide, toward much more authoritarian slant rather than a cooperative, world peace situation.
Right.
So this was prompted by this. I mean, me sharing with this with you guys was kind of prompted by this this article that was written by Colin Toddhunter on offguardian.org. And it says, "Own nothing and be happy, the Great Reset's vision for the future. World Economic Forum's video tells us about the plans for humanity in the year 2030. So this video that he's talking about, this thing, is actually from 2016. This is not something that's new. This is something that they've been talking about for quite some time. And there are some people that would even say that they've been doing this even since before 9/11, okay? And so what he talks about is how Klaus Schwab, which is the CEO of the World Economic Forum, he says that the main driving force for this dystopian Great Reset is a tectonic shift that intends to change how we live, work, and interact with each other. Okay, and it's under the guise of COVID-19. And again, this is not me. I'm going to show you how they talk about this. Okay. And he's in here, he says, in a short video showcase on social media, the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy. This video has been scrubbed from Twitter. But you can still find it online. I'm not going to play it because obviously we can't play stuff on here, but I will put the link for it if people want. All right, so this, like I said, this is from the World Economic Forum. This is November 2016 is when they wrote about this. And they wrote this article, and this is kind of what you were asking about yesterday, Steve, this whole 2030, that again, this is a plan that has been talked about for, you know, in these World Economic Forums and all these like games that they play. They've talked about transitioning the world to I mean, I think of it more of as a controlled type of world, but it's not how it's presented. So it says, welcome to 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy, and life has never been better. That's their way of looking at it.
And of course, you own nothing means somebody else owns everything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's essentially that this government or whatever, they would be the proprietors of everything, and you would essentially be loaned out, or you know what I'm saying, like you're granted things.
But that's the reality. That's a reality for most people already. Like most people are in debt up to their eyeballs, and they owe in their house. If they have a house, they owe rent, or they owe their apartment. Like or their car, or whatever. They don't actually own things except maybe some personal possessions. But the reality is that most people are debt slaves, and that's you know, that system has been encouraged for decades. And so this is just a natural, you know, it seems like this would be the natural progression, just to kind of, you know, make it official. But the reality is that most people don't own very much, right? I mean,
in reality, no one owns really anything, because even your like land, like people that think that they have land, the government can come in and take your land too. So
well, yeah, but I mean, in a legal sense, people, you know, there's a differentiation between you know, owing on a credit card and actually not owing on that. So yeah, you're right. Ultimately, the government can take your land through eminent domain or whatever, but that's always been the case, you know. So there's a continuum, but you know, I think most people don't own very much, and they're basically in debt, right? And you're encouraged, obviously, to consume, and and you end up really not having, you know, not really owning anything. So this seems like this is just a natural progression of that. I would just say that. So this is nothing new as far as I'm concerned.
That very interesting point. That is the reality for a lot of people right now, in a different political environment than what this might ultimately be talking about, though.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So then what this story does is that it gives you essentially like, they predict what it would be like in 2030, and just talking about how, yeah, essentially that everything is monitored and controlled, right? Because your money, everybody is on a UBI, right? And so everything is on a digital dollar. So obviously any transactions that are done, everything is all monitored, right, by these government agencies, or whoever it is that is dispensing whatever it is that's going to be dispensed to us. Yeah. And I mean, I understand what you're saying, Steve, that this is like the natural progression in your view, but I just don't think that we need to go along with it, you know? Like I personally,
I don't want to
go along with it.
I'm not implying that we need to go along with it. I'm just saying that this is it's nothing new in terms of people not really owning most things. You know, people are in debt.
Yeah,
to me,
but I
it's
mean, that's just how they're saying it there. That that they're trying to sell it to you, like, oh, you're gonna own nothing and you'll be happy.
and to me, it's a difference of the whole difference of the thing is the politics of the thing and the degree of the authoritarianism present at the time. If it basically is that way, that literally we're in some kind of communist utopian situation where you don't need money, you get what you want, or a digital dollar, you get what you need, everyone has a roof over their head, but also the government isn't oppressing you. The government, you still have some kind of ability to make decisions in your life and about your government, and that it's all about that, right? And I think what we're talking about is this is trying to treat us the way we think of people being treated in China, that the government keeps tabs on every person, everything. They can't do anything, and they have no vote in their society of any that means anything. That's the difference, right? It could be, having everything you need and not owning anything. It could be utopian or it could be dystopian, depending on the form of government at the time.
Right. I mean, you could have a Stalinist system where, there's actual planned, starvation of like Ukraine in the 30s, where hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people were starved to death, as kind of an economic retribution policy, or you can have a system where people are actually, well-intentioned or whatever. And there's, so I mean, that's the question, but to me, it seems like this is kind of a post-capitalist strategy, that they're realizing that, okay, capitalism has reached the end of the road, that the environmental devastation, wrought by pursuit of wealth for yourself, and that's coming to an end. Well, I'm just saying that this is what it seems to me. So
I see it more. I see it more that technology is making governments realize they're going to be able to completely control people pretty soon. You will be able to have like mini flocks of birds that are really killer drones that eliminate anyone that's any kind of problem at all.
Right. So that's not capitalist. Capitalist is a free market, where
right.
people can pursue their own self-interest. So I mean, basically, it's countering that. I don't think you can argue with that.
No, I'm just talking about what direction the authoritarianism that I see in our current government that's come out with the censorship and so forth lately, that's heading in this direction of the Great Reset that Daisy's talking about.
Right. Okay. So again, the World Economic Forum. This is not Daisy's Economic Forum.
Daisy's Economic Forum.
Okay. Now is the time for a Great Reset. Again, not me saying this,
right?
Them saying this, okay? And again, I will post the links to all this stuff. You can look at, like, literally, Klaus Schwab. He has a podcast where they talk about this, and he has a book that he came out with talking about how COVID needs to be the thing that we use for the Great Reset. So it says COVID-19 lockdowns may be gradually easing, but anxiety about the world's social and economic prospects is only intensifying. This is good reason to worry. A sharp economic downturn has already begun, and we could be facing the worst depression since the 1930s. But while this outcome is likely, it is not unavoidable. To achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education and social contracts and working conditions. Okay? Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. And so it says, in short, we need a great reset of capitalism, not, not post-capitalism. This is a great reset of capitalism. All right. And then it talks about like why we should do it, but I wanted to kind of look into this stuff because he mentions COVID-19 a lot here.
If I was writing a sci-fi movie, I would basically have this current situation. Biden would become president. There'd be this huge crackdown via COVID-19, everyone gets locked down for 6 months or something. And then one worker would somehow escape from China and basically say that Bill Gates helped to release COVID-19, and this is all a result of the pre-planning that happened back 10 years ago on how to use such an emergency event to make just such a thing happen.
I mean, I know that this is supposed to be like so extraordinary that it wouldn't really happen, but I'm literally reading to you what, you know what I'm saying? Like this stuff is happening. They're talking about these things, but it's just not disseminated to the majority of people in CNN or MSNBC, like through these, you know, organizations. This type of media doesn't talk about this, and so it seems as though it's something that's so far-fetched. It's like there's no way that they would do anything like that until it's right at your door, and then they present it to you as, well, what else are you going to do? Right. All right. So then it says the Great Reset agenda would have three main components. The first would steer the market toward fair outcomes. To this end, governments should improve coordination, for example, in tax, regulatory, and fiscal policy, upgrade trade arrangements, and create the conditions for a stakeholder economy. At a time of diminishing tax bases and soaring public debt, governments have a powerful incentive to pursue such action. And then it says the second component of a Great Reset agenda would ensure that investments advance shared goals, such as equity and sustainability. And those are the words that are constant. If you actually listen to these meetings that they have, they're always pushing sustainability, equity, and it's always like those two words that are.
So Daisy, to add to this idea, all right, if you had a not so bright new potential VP, Kamala Harris, and she were taken into a meeting and introduced these concepts, well, she just might like let spill with this bizarre speech about equity of outcomes, right? That she just recently did. That was this completely like Marxist kind of, that was like, what was that? Where'd that come from? From her? She had never said anything like that before.
Okay, wait a second. From the what's wrong with equality and sustainability on their face?
Well, equity of outcomes is specifically what Harris said that people.
Yeah, but I mean, shouldn't you share the wealth? Why should the wealth be all concentrated on the top?
Well, typically what you talk about is right. So if you're actually supporting a capitalist system, you would say equity of opportunity, right? Not equity of outcome.
But that's bullshit. That's like access to healthcare. I think people should be rewarded for, like, Jeff Bezos should be rewarded, but he shouldn't be able to keep all his wealth. It should be distributed so society as a whole benefits. I definitely would support that.
Well, equity of I think we're just talking a different interpretation here, Steve, right? So equity of outcome to me means everybody owns the same little shitty Peugeot car, no matter what no matter what, you live in the same apartment, you get the same car, you get the same whatever.
I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means, in this, it's just one sentence there saying equality and sustainability. So I don't know what that.
Oh, no. So, okay. So the reason that I brought that up is because I have noticed, that when I watch these meetings, because I've actually watched the meetings for these economic forums and stuff, and I'll read stuff, and then I'll listen to these politicians, and it's like they all have the same talking points, and to me, when you all start to sound the same, it's because that is you're trained to sell things in a certain way. Using words like equity and sustainability, those are key words, they're trigger words that people want to hear, because you hear that and you think, oh, this person's a good person, or you think those two words, this must be a good thing. So your way of actually looking and hearing the rest of the message is kind of muffled, because you think, oh, but this is all about equity and sustainability, or equality and sustainability. So this has to be a good thing. So I can just put all of my reasoning to the side and just think that this is all right because those two words are in there. That's how you sell things to people. And so that's why I said the thing about those two words. I'm not.
Okay. I'm not putting aside everything. I'm not, shutting down my critical mind just because I hear those words, but I think sustainability and equality are good things. I mean, because if they were talking about inequality and unsustainability, I wouldn't be like, yeah, you must be, you're because you're against that, you're good. I'm going to support you. I mean, I support equality and sustainability. I think those are good things. I think we need to have a sustainability. We don't have sustainability in the current situation.
Yeah, I have no problem with those words at all. I love sustainability and equal equitable
Outcomes?
opportunity. I'm all for, but it was particular. I'm just kind of making light of the fact that Kamala kind of out of the blue came up with that
Right.
whole thing about equitable outcomes, which was bizarre even to me, you know, and I'm not usually um, taken to that kind
Well,
of
I mean,
like,
she's not about equitable outcomes. Look at
not at all, right?
the Mnuchin deal or whatever. It's not equitable outcomes. Or look about the incarceration of parents of truant children in California. I mean, that's not equitable
Right,
outcome.
but
So
Well,
but but Steve,
unless you
let's
apply
look
a
at let's look at
class,
let's look
unless you
at
apply a
how like
class, if you
Kamala
say,
Harris. Sorry. So let's look at how Kamala Harris, right, she is actually considered a progressive. She is supposedly,
no,
besides Bernie
well,
Sanders, the most
but some people do.
progressive.
Yeah.
Listen,
I
I'm
don't think
telling you
so. I
what
don't
she
think
is
so.
considered. She is literally, that's what they call her, the most progressive senator
Who calls her
besides
that?
Bernie
Because she's
Sanders.
not, even compared
She's
to
not
Elizabeth Warren,
progressive.
she's not
And so that's,
progressive. I mean,
No,
but because she has the language, right? Because she has the language, that is what people take as, oh, she has to
right.
be a progressive because she has the language. And that is why I brought up those words.
well, it's also she's flip flopped on everything, right? So it's all about at what point did you make that judgment that she's the most progressive? She flipped on absolutely everything. She was like a huge pushing Medicare for all, and then when she had to basically say no, we need to protect the ACA, she flipped to that.
So Daisy, am I correct in saying you're saying this is kind of an Orwellian newspeak, that they use these words to kind of cloak what their real agenda is, right?
Well, I think honestly, the I what okay, so you want to know what my interpretation
Yeah,
of this is? Because my interpretation of this is that the agenda is that they see that this is the best way for everyone in the world to move forward, is for everyone to be plugged in and for everything to be tagged and traced, because that is how you can actually account for how many supplies you have and how many people you need to feed and all of this. It's all logistics, right? And so for them, they look at it as it's only natural that we are going to have this system set up, right, where even like AI, the whole reason why you want to have AI is so that you have more brain power, you have more capacity, right? That is what we are doing. We're using it as a tool. And the danger of AI is that if it gets online, that it can go out of control, right? And I feel like that's how it is with this whole thing, where what they're trying to do is they're trying to address famine and climate change and all these kind of things, and they feel that this is the best way to do it. The problem is that what's going to happen is that this is going to lead to people, again, this is my interpretation, to people being even more indebted, in the sense that you will have no power for anything. And instead, what's going to happen is that companies like Amazon and like, and Google and all of these companies, they're going to become even more massive because they're going to be at the hub. They're going to be the ones that are
right.
creating this system. And so that is my issue, is that these already powerful companies are going to become even more powerful. We have the proof in the pudding with what happened during this whole pandemic, right? That you had all of these small companies couldn't open, they couldn't do anything. There was only a handful of companies that were allowed to stay open and were allowed to continue to make money, while other people either lose their business or they lose their job or whatever it may be, right? And it's only these companies that they're not really seeing any losses right now. Hello, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jeff Bezos just added another like $30 billion to his little sack.
Oh,
Like, I mean,
if I go and stand out with I stand out and have a beer with my buddy on his driveway in his garage or like that, we will see an Amazon truck while we're standing there having one beer. There's no doubt about it.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
and we've talked about already how these businesses, like even the malls, right? You have all of these major stores like Old Navy, that they're not able to pay their rent.
Right.
Okay, and so what you're having is that like Simon malls, they're having to buy these stores in order to be able to in order so that these companies don't go bankrupt, because if they go bankrupt, they don't get any money. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like what's happening is that everything is becoming more centralized. All the power, all the money, everything is becoming more centralized. And this is accelerating that. But it's being sold to you as this is the best thing forward, and this is for your best benefit. That
Right.
is
I share your concern, Daisy, about this concentration of power and the concentrate. You know, you see this agglomeration of these corporate entities like Amazon and everything taking over, and I'm concerned about it. And it seems like, you know, a lot of it's going in a negative direction. I see the World Economic Forum. I see some of their things as having very troubling implications, but some of the things I see not necessarily as being negative, at least on their face. What do you suggest is what? Okay, so we're all victims of this system. It's getting worse and worse, and it's been getting worse for decades now. What do we do to counteract this? I mean, we try to work on a Tulsi campaign that goes nowhere. Like, what are we going to do to like change the system? What do you suggest? What's sustainable going forward? Because we have all these problems. What's the alternative?
I just want to add one flavor to it. To me, the big problem here is that as you set up these systems of more control, it's going to become more dangerous as technology evolves. You're going to get to the point where somebody simply could get elected president, and they could appoint themselves dictator because they control they essentially control so many systems of killer drones.
But I mean, how do we fight this system besides like, okay, we can educate people about it and we can encourage other people. But I mean, the reality is most people are just totally unaware of this. I mean, Jim and I didn't even know about this great reset.
Which is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So now you've doubled you got 3 people now who are aware of it. But like in terms of like changing changing the system, like, and let's say we got the word out and all of a sudden everyone becomes aware of it. How is it really going to change things? We're still going to have like all these problems around the world. Like what's a solution for overpopulation, for hunger, for all these issues, for debt, for wealth inequality? What are the answers for all these problems that how are you going to counteract these efforts?
How am I going to counteract?
No, how are we? How are we,
the
enlightened few, going to counteract this evil, nefarious,
I mean,
conspiracy, which is what it is, right?
It starts with exactly what we're doing now, right? And I'm very much the type of person that, like I believe in voting with your dollar, right? With what what you do with your life, how you are in your life is what's going to bring about the greatest change. That's what I think, right? And so, like, for instance, if like I believe that we all need to start checking out. We need to like, for instance, I don't buy Amazon. If I see anything Amazon, I make sure not to. And you know what? I'm sure they don't miss my money because he makes so much fucking money. It doesn't even matter. But that's how I am making a difference. And if more people like me were to stop just going along to get along and being like, well, I mean, what other option is there? Might as well just get on the train. Well, if more people were to stop doing that and actually doing the opposite, then I think there would be more traction. But as long as, first of all, as people don't know what's going on, then of course this is like nothing is going to change. And it's not that I'm expecting for this one thing to come out and that's it, like everyone in the world changes, but I also don't think that like me personally, again, I do things. I don't just talk about things. And for me, this is me doing something, you know what I'm saying? Like this is, even if it's just one other person, like, okay, so now you guys are talking about this. Hopefully you guys will have conversations with people. And who knows, maybe this is like a ripple effect,
Right. I mean, I agree
that's how I see
things. And I mentioned that article from Red Flag, like at our last session, about how elections don't really change things. It's always been social movement, social unrest that's resulted in change, and so ultimately it comes down to economics, and you look at the Montgomery bus boycott. I mean, that really had an effect because it wasn't through the ballot box; it was through economic action boycott. People made a decision where to spend their dollars, right, and that had an influence. So ultimately, it comes down to that. And I agree with you. I mean, that's really a potent a tool for change, but still, I mean, it begs a question of what are you going to replace this with? So like AI seems like it's inevitable, right? And AI is just becoming so prevalent and powerful that how are we going to counteract that? Are we going to, are we going to vote in somebody who's going to like ban AI, and is that going to work? I mean, I just don't
But it's
see.
not, but you see, it's not about, okay, so like banning AI, right? So it's like even Elon Musk, who is literally working on this kind of stuff, even he has talked about the dangers of AI and how we need to have legislation out there that controls how much we are allowed to do with AI. And I think that we should be expecting that our legislatures are fucking educated enough in what's going on, in what their own military is working on in DARPA and all these places, okay? They should be educated enough to make sure that we do have laws. Look at all this shit that's going on with the internet and all this censorship, and it's been done under the guise of, oh, but they're private companies, blah, 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 they can do whatever they want. And it's really because of the fact that our legislation hasn't caught up to our internet law.
So you're looking,
right?
but it's essentially you're looking for more authority through legislation to control it. So there's authoritarianism, right? I mean, doesn't it come down to people have to change their consciousness? Like people have to be, have to get away from this idea that we have to exploit other people and control other people. I mean, going back to, the Phoenix program in Vietnam, it was like this us versus them mentality. I mean, we have to, if we never get beyond that mentality, we can have all those legislation we want, and it's not going to solve our problems.
What does that have to do with AI? We do need to legislate AI because these companies, they can't just do whatever the fuck they want.
Because first of all, government is controlled by corporate interests. So like, it's not going to be like to think that government's going to control corporations is naive. I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I don't think
so
you're going to be able to ban AI.
We shouldn't have any sort of legislation then.
Well, I mean, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be effective. I mean,
just put some context around it. Like, computer scientists have for decades advocated for things like if you're doing experiments around AI, it's not connected up to the internet in any way, so you couldn't have that instant God effect of suddenly it can absorb all knowledge and actually have interconnections to the world and do things. I'm in computers, and I basically feel like you can't stop it, because like if I retired, I could as a hobby take up trying to develop AI. Basically, the idea of a self-learning program is kind of a fascinating.
I mean, Google hired Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil, who wrote the what's it called? I can't remember the point where AI becomes
a God machine, or
the singularity. It's called the singularity.
Oh, the singularity. Okay.
And the singularity is when AI becomes able to program on its own, and then all bets are off. And he wrote a book called the Singularity back in like the 90s, whatever. And he was recently hired by Eric Schmidt now of Google. But Kurzweil's now, and it's like he's in his 80s, whatever. But I guess he's still working for Google. But he predicted that this would happen in the early 2020s, that AI would reach this point of.
So your point about it being able to like program and therefore like reprogram itself, like improve itself.
Yeah, I mean, his book, I read his book quite a while ago, but he talked about 3 different aspects. One was the medical aspect, that you're going to have these, bots that will be able to go into your brain or into your bloodstream and be able to repair tissue and do all these things. I mean, potentially there's always a good side and a bad side, right? So the good side is that, there could be all these great benefits of this technology, right? But the other side, of course, is that the technology itself could become evil, when it becomes it could become a threat.
But the technology itself wouldn't. Intrinsically, why would it become evil? Becoming evil, that's anthropomorphizing it. It would have to be that whoever programmed it, they put something in there that would call for that evil. The evil wouldn't just come upon itself.
The AI can program itself, and it has self-awareness and decides that it wants to perpetuate itself, and it sees the human species as a threat. Then it might take measures on its own. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real.
That's anthropomorphizing it.
Yeah, because it's not anthropomorphizing.
Well, no.
But you would,
Daisy, it could. I mean, there are a lot of cases where if something is an expensive, item, people would say you should protect yourself from harm. And the thought is always that, or somehow there's a embedded programming about improving upon what you know, getting better. And at some point, that we might just be in the way. It might not even be an evil intent. It's simply that, it getting better means doing something where
Means getting rid of us.
Yeah, because we're taking
right, but
resources.
That's not being evil.
No, it's not evil.
In
It's
our
not
eyes
evil.
because it's against us, but it's not being evil. It's literally just the programming. It's just doing what it thinks
well,
is.
neoliberal imperialism is not evil, from our point of view necessarily,
I'm sorry?
because we're benefiting. Neoliberal or neoconservative imperialism is not evil from our point of view necessarily, because
it is from my point of view.
Well, it is, but like for a lot of people, we're benefiting. We get cheap goods from around the world, cheap labor and cheap materials because of that system. But if you're a victim of that system, it is evil, right?
But that's also the reason why, if you say anything against the United States, then you are, or against imperialism, that it's that you hate this country, right? And that you hate the United States, and that's not necessarily what that means. If anything, you are more of a patriot if you are someone who calls out the indiscretions of your country.
Right, but I'm a world global patriot. I'm not a national patriot. I think that in that system of national government.
I'm not calling you a patriot. I'm just saying.
Or humanist.
All right. Anyways. So then the third and final priority of a great reset agenda is to harness the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution, which is what we've been talking about, to support the public good, especially by addressing health and social challenges. During the COVID-19 crisis, companies, universities, and others have joined forces to develop diagnostics, therapeutics, and possible vaccines, establish testing centers, create mechanisms for tracing infections, and deliver telemedicine. Imagine what could be possible if similar concerted efforts were made in every sector. So, and this is a picture showing all the different aspects of life that would change. This is what they have imagined, okay, that would change under the Great Reset. This is what they would like. And I'm pretty sure, literally everything is on here. I don't even know what wouldn't be on here. So then on Time magazine, and this was like the big thing, that this was like, I was like, whoa, I can't believe that this, that they actually did this. They actually had, this was the original cover of the Time magazine. And again, it says The Great Reset. So not me making this shit up, right? By Klaus Schwab. And it's literally them putting together a planet.
Was this also in 2016? I'm looking for a date.
No, this was this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think it was either this month or last month.
Yeah.
That they put this out. And then it's like, you see all the different people here, putting together the country or the globe, right? And, here it talks about all the people. And again, it's always talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. He always brings it back to the pandemic and how we need to use this as the catapult, right? To be able to do this. And then this is another piece that the Time put out, right? That it's like also the other piece on Forbes that was about how it would be in 2030. This one talks about how it would be in 2023. So it's 2023. Here's how we fix the global economy. And it talks about the US began to change its approach after November 3rd, 2020, when Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in the presidential election and the Democrats held the majority in both houses of Congress, which that's not true, but and then it says, following his inauguration in January 2021, President Biden moved quickly to rebuild frayed ties between America and Europe, setting up a forum to share collective intelligence that could inform a smarter form of government. European governments were eager to learn from the investment strategies used by the US government, like those led by the Defense Research Agency, DARPA, to spur research and development in high-risk technologies. And the US was eager to learn from Europe how to create sustainable cities and reinvigorate civic participation. And then it talks about here on February 11, 2021, the FDA approved the most promising COVID-19 vaccine for manufacture in the US mass production began immediately. Plans for swift global distribution kicked in, and the first citizens received their shots within 3 weeks, free at the point of use. It was the fastest development and manufacture of a vaccine on record and a monumental success in health innovation. So, you know that I've been talking to you guys a lot about how, especially on the debates and stuff like that, that they kept pushing the vaccine, the vaccine, the vaccine. And the fact that we obviously have Operation Warp Speed, which we've been talking about now for how long? Okay, this is how the military is going to distribute. Again, not my words. This is Trump and all these people from, and they're actually 60 Minutes actually did a story on Warp Speed. So if you want to go and check it out, you can check it out, how they are pushing for this to happen early next year. They want to start with this, okay? And eventually it will get to the point where you will not be able to participate in the world without this vaccination to prove that you are clear. And so that was my whole tie-in for this whole thing that went on for like ever, because we just went off in tangents.
Yeah, interesting, bizarre. Yeah, and who knows what could happen? It could be that, and it appears it's a well orchestrated, designed thing to happen. To me, this kind of a thing could happen by accident, just because of, as they stumble in the direction of trying to solve problems and they implement technology. Essentially, it's going to be too tempting for somebody to use the technology to control the populations, and we're just going to get to the point where I don't know how things can not get very bad with the advancement of technology and the ability to control masses, threaten them all easily. And so I think that the best chances for human societies are either beneficent aliens that come down, or if we all become Amish and we relinquish all but basic technology. Yeah. We need all to convert to being Amish.
Well, if you talk to Mike Ravel, he definitely thinks the aliens are involved.
And he does. Yeah, he's had that. Yeah.
I don't. I'm open to anything as long as you provide some support for it. And he actually has.
If we're wrapping this up, I don't want to tie this in with aliens, because this is not some conspiracy theory.
No. I'm just talking.
They're putting out these plans. And things are coming across, and I don't want to conflate the two, because I don't want it to come off as this is like some sort of. I'm not taking this as a joke. I mean, you guys might take it as a joke, but I don't take it as a joke.
I don't take it as a joke.
It's really serious, and I don't know.
My last statement was that I would see it, even if it wasn't being done by design, I see that as being the natural direction, because of the push for globalism anyway, and because of the ability that technology is going to give for anyone to become a dictator. Anyone that happens to come into power at the right time is going to suddenly have control over all their population, and they won't be able to complain, because they, like I say, they have a flock of killer drones that can eliminate anybody that's a problem, and they're going to have.
They won't even need to do that, because with the whole thing as in China that's already going on, that they have the social credit score where you cannot exist in the world.
Yeah, all these things.
Unless you have the score enough to do whatever it is.
Right.
And who determines that score? The Chinese government.
But it's all tied in. It's all possible because of technology. It allows them to keep track of people, and it's all tied together in my thinking,
Right.
Yeah.
So it seems to me there's kind of a convergence going on, between it seems like other governments are almost jealous of the ability of the Chinese government to monitor and may have that level of control, and how are they so successful? I mean, it started with the one child policy. Remember that in the 80s, whatever, that they were able to enforce that, and people acquiesced to that system, And I mean, you can argue either way whether it was good or bad, because it did, they don't have starvation in China like they do in India or whatever. I mean, they were able to create some stability, but on the other hand, you had these extremely oppressive measures, late term abortions, forced late term abortions, and everything. So I mean, you can make the argument, but it seems like there is kind of like a recognition that the Chinese are at the forefront of AI and this system, and we're almost, other governments are jealous, or other institutions are jealous of this ability to do this.
And how do they not take action or call out the big tech companies that are assisting China in these policies? Basically, you've got Zuckerberg and and Bezos and all these people helping them do this shit, and our government loves these big tech people rather than feeling they should crack down on them or
well, the thing is that they also work with these companies. Like Google has massive Pentagon contracts, like they're all, even Elon Musk. Elon Musk is now part of he's a defense contractor, because now he can deliver like missiles or whatever in less than 60 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So I mean, maybe the ultimate thing is kind of like we'll work together with the Chinese. Like let's collaborate on this, because
well, if nothing else, the Pentagon probably
literally that is what I thought we just talked about this. That's what's going to happen. All the world governments are going to work together.
Even if not that, I can see how the Pentagon likes the fact that Amazon and Zuckerberg and everything, they get to do this development on the Chinese dollar that then will benefit the Pentagon. If they want to use some kind of limited aspects of this to be able to spy on Americans or whatever like that, they'll have benefited from the development that happened for the Chinese, So maybe we don't want the full abilities that that the big tech allow China to have, but we will someday, or we want a part of it or something,
Okay. Now I did read that article you sent, Daisy, the one you sent offline, the one by Martin Armstrong, or that Martin Armstrong Institute. I thought that was interesting. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but what I thought was the way it was presented is that it's almost like the threat is authoritarianism in any form versus kind of a libertarianism, ideal, that this extreme system of a World Economic Forum and Nazism is equated with communism, because communism was explicitly mentioned in that article as being something we want to avoid. And it just seems to me like that's not the real conflict. Conflict is between injustice and oppression and justice, and it seems like there was the mention made of the fact that Klaus, what's his name, was born in 1938 or whatever, and under Hitler. I mean, first of all, that's meaningless, because he was, he had no decision to be born under in 1938, and it's not, he was 7 years old when the war ended, and a lot of other people who were progressive activists, who were born at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be associated with a Nazi regime just because they were born during it. But I just thought, like, what is this? Like, it seems like it's kind of like this, and also this guy too. I mean, this guy Martin Armstrong has this kind of crazy theory of, like, it's pi multiplied times 1,000 years is 3,000 something days, which equals 8 something years, and it means the economic cycles repeat every 8 years. And like, I mean, it's to me that's kind of out there. And so
I just sent you that link because they had the video. That's the only reason why.
Okay, because the article itself was like.
But I don't. But the people who are economists that are talking about this stuff, like I said, I don't subscribe to Armstrong economics or whatever. I just saw that was the first link that came up, that it wasn't YouTube, so I was like, okay, let me just send them.
Well, it seems to me like this whole, like, Tulsi was onto something when she was looking at, like, trying to unite left and right, and that the extremes, sometimes they're the ones who really kind of get it. They may not get the whole picture, but sometimes these, the right extreme and the left extreme and the libertarians and the extreme communists on one side, and you have they're not part of this duopoly, and they kind of see beyond that. And it seems to me like that's what we're talking about here. And to some extent, like this World Economic Forum, like, what are they part of? Are they part of the duopoly? Are they more extreme, or what? And where do they fit in?
I would say that's extreme.
Okay.
I would say their views are extreme.
Okay. And how successful are they going to be in implementing this? Because you look.
I mean, they're literally in charge of the world. Like all of these global
this
economies,
82-year-old guy.
they're in charge of all that. So I'm pretty sure that they're going to be pretty successful.
Well, I don't know, because like you look at the Phoenix program. I was looking at the book by what's his name, Douglas Valentine, that was mentioned by what's her name in our podcast, Whitney Webb. They talked about this. In Vietnam, they had this Phoenix program, and actually, my former congressman from Connecticut, not Richard Simmons, was part of this program, and they went around basically and they assassinated people everywhere, like 50,000 people, and they tortured people, and they did all these terrible things, and it was failure. I mean, obviously the war didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. So a lot of times these are bungling attempts to like influence things with these grand ideas and everything. It's just like, I mean, any grand idea, when you try to implement it, inevitably it's going to backfire on some level. And it's just, this World Economic Forum plan, like, well, it sounds like they're going to do all these things and they're going to be in control, but is it really going to work? And is, like, why are we even talking about it if we didn't think there was a chance that it's not going to work, that we're going to be able to resist it, right?
I mean,
be no point talking about it.
The reason that I want to talk about this is not so much that I think that there's a chance that we can stop it. It's more so that I think that people should know what they're being indoctrinated into. I don't think that people should just be led blindly to believe that their government is altruistically doing all this shit for them, when in actuality, it's not. It's these companies that are said to become all powerful, okay, and the biggest companies out there, and you're gonna think that that they are, not you specifically, but people are gonna think that these companies are just doing this just to benefit you, when in actuality it's not.
People don't care. People like the convenience of like clicking on a thing and do the one click ordering from Amazon. They don't think about it, and like, I go down to the mailroom of my apartment.
So because those people don't care, I shouldn't talk about it? Is that what you're...
Well, no, I'm saying it seems like it's it's a Herculean task. I mean, because I'm just saying the awareness is like, we're a few people here and there's a few people around. And I argue that if it's a worthwhile cause, you should pursue it no matter what, even if it seems like it's impossible. But I'm just saying the reality is that most people, they don't feel like they're being oppressed. It's like happy, friendly fascism or something. They feel like, I'm okay. I come home, I get to watch my Netflix and drink my beer or whatever, and I'm not going to worry about it. And unfortunately, that's the reality. That people are complacent. How are you going to get people riled up unless they feel like they're losing
all
something?
I can do is just put out the information. If people want to know the information, then I can hopefully assist with that. If they're not open to it, then there's nothing I can do.
I mean, I see when there's a crisis, after this winter, people lose their jobs, that get kicked out of their apartments, then there's going to be a potential mass movement. And my question would be, how do you channel that energy into something positive, or is it impossible?
Obviously, it's impossible. So,
is it? I mean,
that's what you're saying. It's impossible. So,
no, I mean, I'm just saying we should. To me, that's going to be more effective in trying to enact change. I mean, it's important to talk about it, but it seems to me like action is going to like economic action, boycotts.
But if people don't know about what's going on, then how are we supposed to act?
Well, because if people lose their jobs and they don't have anything, then they're gonna act, because they have nothing.
How do you know that?
Because that's what history has shown us. So when people lose everything, they're not just going to sit back and take it. I mean, they're going to, like, some people are going to stand up and say, like, this is not acceptable. And
that is a good point to me too. Is that when you essentially, if you do another, like, 6-month law, I guess they're talking like 6-week lockdown, but when you do a lockdown and people lose a job, they have time to sit around and think about this stuff.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
it's funny. It's actually a dangerous situation for the government to do that, to allow people to start to organize and talk to each other and complain about their situation, whereas if just so freaking busy all the time, they don't have time to think about it. That they're not a threat.
I mean, they recognize the system is not sustainable. Hence, why are they rolling out this World Economic Forum, Great Reset thing? Because they obviously think the system is not sustainable, and they're worried about this kind of instability coming up in the future. The unrest and yeah, I mean, people sitting around, yeah, you have time to think about these things. You know, and short of just, you know, literally killing people off like they did with the Phoenix program, you know, what are you going to do to kind of create stability? So Les raises a
Yeah.
lot of interesting questions.
Yeah.